It's starting up. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the role-playing review on Xanathar's Guide to Everything. My name is Drew37, also known as Jimenez. Today I have a guest with me. His name is Jacob, also known as...
Red Raven.
Let's see. Everyone say hello.
I can't remember them. Hello.
Red Raven is perfect. Let's see. And the whole purpose of these videos is to kind of review how... So a lot of people have done mechanical reviews on the different books like Sword Coast Adventures, Guides, Xanathar, such as that. My thing is, I want to see how much of an impact on role-playing for newer players and role-playing for experienced players, as well in the game itself, how each of these books affect role-playing in itself. Which, luckily, Xanathar's Guide did an amazing job. Like, it added so much stuff to the game. But we'll get to that later. We're probably going to start off with reviewing the classes, one by one each, and reviewing some of the other chapters, such as the feats, the tables, all that kind of good stuff. So today we'll be covering Barbarians. And luckily, Mr. Red Raven here is more of an experienced Barbarian player than I am. So when it comes to actually mechanically wise, and also role-playing wise for the Barbarian part. I know a couple archetypes and such, but it's nice to have a second opinion to bounce off of. If you don't mind, Red Raven.
I don't mind at all.
Alright, well, getting started with the very first entry in our awesome book, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which is on the picture, by the way. Please buy it. It's worth buying. It's a great book. Let's see. The first entry talks about the different paths and also different roleplay aspects for barbarians that they added, such as mini tables, which this book has lots of mini tables for each class that kind of flesh out a character. Even if you're a new player and you're like, hey, I don't feel comfortable making a new character with this big backstory, you can either roll for kind of a random story or just pick one at, just say, hey, well, that one because it seems cool, and fill in the little spots later. Any particular ones you think that you like, Raven?
About the tables for the Barbarian, if we're talking about that, I mean, the tattoos are pretty cool. Of course, it kind of, like, if you're looking for a tattoo for your Barbarian to have, you're going to want it a bit more specific to his background, or her background.
One that feels a little bit more important to them, right? Or like
more personal, yeah. Something more symbolic of where they came from, what they do, um, what their family is, and also depending on which path you take, this could also tie into that. Um, so the two paths that are standard, that are with the player's handbook, the path of Berserker and um, Totemic Warrior. The Totemic Warrior, you can have tattoos representing the totems you have, like the bear or the wolf or the eagle. And the Berserker, you can just have just bloody war tattoos or stuff like that. And so I think it's pretty cool to give you these tables. I think are more good starting positions, um, like personal totems. You can use these, or you can use these as ideas for them. I had, my first character was a dwarven barbarian that had trinkets woven into his beard. Um, and those were his totems. So I think it's a good starting place, especially for new players and just anybody that wants to get ideas for designing the overall look of their barbarian.
I absolutely agree. They're, especially like you said, for starting points, they're great springboards. Or if even for more experienced player, they're like, hey, I just want to roll up a quick character. I don't want to have to develop a character's whole backstory. These make great little, hey, I want the basic archetype for everything and just want it kind of fleshed out for me. Bam, done. And I really like how tattoos are your favorite. My thing was actually I like the superstitions, the giving for the tribal aspect, like hey, you're afraid of disturbing the bones of the undead, for example, is one, or you never trust magic users, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Let's see. So now those are the little mini tables. Please, whenever you get this book, read over them. They're fantastic, great roleplay aspects. Let's see. We're going to actually go into the archetypes for the class, the new ones that have been added, and also how they do affect role playing. Some mechanics, but only if they affect the role playing more so. The first being, I think that we can both, me and Raven, both agree, the path of the ancestral guardian, which is pretty cool actually.
Yeah, it pretty much gives you the ability to, while raging, summon your ancestors to fight alongside you. Um, this has always reminded me of the Dark Elves from Elder Scrolls. because they always had that ability to summon an ancestral spirit for racial ability. I think this is really good for someone. I mean, the obvious choice is someone who has a shaman background from their wandering tribe, or someone who watches over the dead, protects tombs, stuff like that. I think that's, as far as role playing is, pretty good. Fits it rather easily.
Let's see, absolutely. And so my thing was, it also that archetype is always the classic great to go to one. I was also thinking of some other ones. So, for example, let's say you're a person who used to murder people, for like just to be violent, and then the spirits of the dead kind of haunted you to try to make yourself into a better person, redeem yourself. They could also be your ancestral spirits, making sure you stay
That
on your path of redemption while still helping you if you're staying on that path. So that's how I was seeing it. You could do something even like that, for example.
Yeah, or even building off that, someone who's disgraced their tribe and their ancestor spirits are following them around, trying to regain their honor.
That's actually good too. Actually, now that you talk about that, uh, he's gonna probably have to write me in. But even so, big Disney movie buff. My wife loves him. Mulan is a great example. She could technically be one because her whole all Japanese culture is very big into ancestors.
Chinese,
Chinese. That's right. Chinese. My
Jewish
apologies.
Chinese, yeah.
Well, even
You,
Japanese to an
you,
extent.
you just offended two countries.
I did, but they both have it.
They do. There's Eastern Asia. There's a lot of ancestor veneration.
Man, I just sucked right there. But yeah, that's actually even both cultures. You could still use that as your ancestral guardian. Like you could say, "Hey, you're like you said, venerating your ancestors, trying to honor them, maybe accomplishing some great quest to make yourself worthy of getting being an ancestor yourself." A famous one.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of a counterpoint when you're talking about Mulan. Mulan, I think, would be more of a monk archetype, which would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
With ancestral guardian support for a monk. But I think the key whenever you're playing a barbarian is realizing that it's rage that fuels your abilities, anger that fuels your abilities. Um, so just having that internal the so the your paths are pretty much where your anger comes from, is what Wizards of the Coast has done here with fifth edition. So Path of the Ancestor Guardian is pretty much rage coming from these ancestral spirits that guide and protect you, or fight alongside you. Um, just like the Path of Berserker is just battle rage, and the Totemic Warrior is, rage from your rage draws in your spirit animals. So it's always key, I think, when role playing a barbarian, to remember that, in battle you're not probably thinking with the clearest head. Most warriors will have an innate ability to fight strategically. Anyone with experience. So that doesn't mean you have to do stupid stuff in battle all the time. Um, and barbarians, by all means, is a mainly battle class. It's you're not going to have a lot of abilities. You're not going to be usually the one, uh, being the diplomat. You're the one rushing in and, just getting in the enemy's face, dealing damage, and that rage just fuels that, and that's where these abilities come from. So I think that it's always a good thing to keep that in mind.
And I can see that. I do like also, but this archetype does add some things that are not combat based. For example, it does at level 10 it does offer the consulted spirits ability. It gives you clairvoyance and augury, but you have to use it to talk to your spirits, for example, and you
Yeah,
get the wisdom from your ancestors. I thought that was pretty cool. So you don't have to always be bugging your wizard. Hey, can you do divination, clairvoyance, augury, all that kind of good stuff? You could be like,
yeah,
let me go talk to my ancestors and see if they have any wisdom to impart.
yeah. It gives you some good scouting abilities. Give the barbarian a bit more versatility outside of combat as well.
That too.
So yeah,
Mechanically, it's good, and also because, again, role playing wise, you feel like more of a connection with those spirits. They're not just like, hey, they helped me out, and they're just like they're my battle buddies over here. They're like, these are real people or real people from your history helping you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's see. So, ultimately, getting outside that, mostly it's mechanical. It's fantastic. It gives you advantage on sometimes. It gives you disadvantage, your enemy's disadvantage. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one, which Jacob's gotten to play. I made a kind of a couple of test ones because I thought they were pretty cool as in their connection to nature. The next one is Path of Storm Herald.
Actually, I haven't played that. I've done the Totemic Shaman,
That's
Warrior,
right.
and Zealot.
Which in that case,
Um,
I guess we're both going to be
but
going off our theory builds then.
yeah, but Storm Herald looks really fun to play too. Um,
So the basics of a.
so
Oh, you go ahead.
no, so especially when you're starting out, Storm Herald I think harkens back to more of where your character's from. Um, just because you take on these aspects of the environment you're from. Um, at third level, you start out with an ore based on either desert, sea, or tundra. Uh, be like generally where you see nomadic tribes. Um, and I think that's says a lot to help defining the background of the character. So if your character's from a desert wandering tribe, um, like the Bedouins or something like that, you go with desert and do some fire damage, and it is just pretty cool.
It does feel cool just to like when you channel the inner fury of nature itself. It just shows everybody like they see whirlwind circling your body or like heat rising off your skin and like burning everything, and then or what's tundra, tundra causing like
Yeah, tundra's cold. So just like maybe when you role play when you go into a rage, have your character skin turn blue. His breath is like you can see his breath like he's cold.
or the ground around him has a frosty sheen where he takes a step, something cool like that.
Mm,
Actually,
yeah,
even in the book, like remember when I was talking to you earlier about how even you could have a barbarian who's from like a druidic enclave who didn't feel like they were like they didn't feel they were necessary to become a druid or some spellcaster.
yeah. Maybe one that didn't have aptitude for magic, but
Absolutely,
had that connection to nature. Yeah, this would be a good fit for him.
because you'd be like, I defend nature in a different way. I am nature's champion by embodying the very elements. And also, as Raven mentioned earlier, also great for your classic shaman. So if you're like doing a tribal and you're like, hey, instead of the spirits this time, you're doing like Thrall from Warcraft. The elements will destroy you. I
Mm.
am the elements.
Yeah,
That's
you're getting into like so there's pretty much three paths of the barbarian: totemic, ancestral garden, and storm herald. They all kind of play into different aspects of what a shaman or a witch doctor of one of these tribes could do. And ancestral garden being more of the witch doctor. Totemic and Storm Herald that more connection with nature, that more shamanistic. But I think they all play well to that very tribal background that barbarians are known for. Um, whereas they're the leaders of the tribe. So someone who was possibly the son of the chief, um, maybe younger son that can't inherit the chieftainship. Um, I think that these all kind of play into that without being having to be a magic user.
a good point. Really good point, actually. Now the only thing is, it's kind of sad. This is a great archetype, especially mechanically. It's one of the better archetypes for barbarian, especially compared to berserker, which is a whole other thing in itself. But the only thing is, it doesn't have a lot of roleplay abilities added to the class. The most you could say is it has shielding storm, which is where you affect everybody, like people in your party, to be protected from this. But mostly, like Raven was saying, you can roleplay when you use the abilities. Like again, your skin turns blue, ice forms around your steps, the heat around you, the air around you starts to shimmer from heat. You can do
Mm-hmm.
little things like that. Not, of course, don't go into a 12-minute story about it. Just very quick things that make people go, oh, that's cool. I can see it now.
Yeah, yeah. The idea is when you first use it, describe it, and then don't go too in depth with it the every time you rage. Um, just to give your just to maybe describe it every once in a while, or give like a little flashback so people remember what you're doing. And just kind of paint that quick picture. But in battle, you do want to keep things moving. You don't want a lot of heavy role play in battle.
Not every turn.
Not every turn, no, because that will bog down the combat.
Let's see. So now that we talked about the Path Stormhell, which is a fantastic one, we are moving on to this is actually, as bad as it sounds, this is my favorite, just because there are so many ways you can see it. Path of the
Oh
Zealot.
yeah, yeah. This is by far the path my most favorite character, Sixerath, the Naga zealot from Amonkhet took. Um, I think the main draw here is you can be a priest, and not be a cleric, not be a healer. It does say, like in the description of this, that there are a variety of gods for war, and violence. Not all of them are good. There are a few good ones, but if you're doing a custom campaign, definitely talk to your DM about what gods are what gods are going to be in this world. Um,
That's a very good point.
because
Always
yeah,
discuss with your DM about things.
yeah. Um, because having that knowledge of that god is pretty much what a zealot's all about. He's all about that god, and the rage is actually is more of a divine rage, given from that god. It's God himself. So it lends itself to a barbarian that's not just the tribal wanderer. It's more of a barbarian, in a sense, but like a crusader, or a holy warrior.
A divine
Um,
champion who embodies the
divine,
god's
yeah,
strength.
divine champion. That's not that stereotypical knight or anything like
Or a
that.
stereotypical
Someone a bit
cleric
more,
that
yeah,
I
or
know
paladin.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah, cleric or paladin. So it's a way of having some. If you want to play somebody who is religious, and you don't want to do a cleric, you don't want to do a paladin, this is I think a good way to go.
Hey, and also there's another great way to look at it too. But like all the great examples you showed, like divine champion, things of that nature, they can also represent the aspect of. So let's say you do have a good natured god who does have some aspects of war. They could
Mm-hmm.
represent the more rage oriented side. The
Yeah.
sometimes the hand that smites. Sometimes I if you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the divine vengeance.
There we go. Thank you. That's better. That's
Exactly.
flat. More. Well, I very basic with my language.
Poetic. Yeah, and you have some great abilities that kind of go along with this. Gifts from your god, like at third level, Warrior of the Gods, where spells like Raise Dead, as long as they just excuse me, as long as the sole effect of it is restoring you to life, don't cost any material. Um,
That is
and
it.
and then it,
Go ahead.
yeah, and then at 14th level, Rage Beyond Death, where you can just you can die and still fight, as long as your rage persists. Um, so these two abilities, they make the Zealot Warrior extremely hard to kill. But it's also good for role playing, because it's like these are divine gifts from your god, that even when you're dead, you're fighting. So,
I agree absolutely. Like even you can play that off as so an enemy strikes you down and they turn their back to you obviously because they're like, oh, he's dead, and all of a sudden your god just hits the pretty much the metaphorical light around you, and all of a sudden your body just slowly raises up and you're like, hey, I'm not down yet.
yeah.
And also another great one is a zealous presence. That's another great role play one because it's like as you were mentioning Crusaders, and yes, that's a basic archetype, but the Crusader leaders like where they like got everybody into a frenzy.
Mhm.
Like, hey, go with me, pretty much, or
Yeah.
be left behind without repentance. Like you become that because everyone is infused with the divine energy that you're infused with from the gods. So it's actually, to me, it's a pretty cool thing. Like you now affect everybody, and everybody kind of goes into a pseudo rage.
Yeah,
But
it's like your old school, from Diablo 2, the Paladin Ors,
yeah,
almost.
oh my gosh, that
Um,
does make sense. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, like the helpful ones, not like the thorn one.
yeah, about that.
Yeah.
So, other than that, since we gave some examples of role playing and everything like that, and we're reaching about our 20 mark, thanks for joining us. This was going to be our first little test one. See how everybody likes it. If you have any questions, leave comments in the description. Send me some questions via message on YouTube, email, all kinds of good stuff. I'll be glad to help. Thanks again for joining us, Raven.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoyed it.
We look forward to seeing bards next, because they're always fun when it comes to roleplay.
Yep, sure are.
And we should be hopefully having a special guest for that who's been playing bards. So, have a great night, y'all.
Night.
Have a great night.